Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. Right, Andrew's just obviously spoken a little bit about Pitney Bowes, but quick show of hands, how many of you, prior to Andrew's introduction, knew who Pitney Bowes are? Okay, right, a few hands going up. And I'm going to guess that the majority of you would have known Pitney Bowes for what we're synonymous for, which is the franking machine. There is a lot more to us than that. We've gone on this big journey of transformation over the past 5 years, and we operate in a number of different areas now. We are a 97-year-old company, and thankfully somebody saw the writing on the wall many years ago, and saw that obviously changing markets meant that the direct mail industry and mailing in general was on the decline, and so we had to obviously look at other routes to market, and hence was born a software business within Pitney Bowes, which is where I work. I joined Pitney Bowes back in 2012, and when I very, very first joined, I was working in a content and campaign marketing capacity. I had a number of individuals that approached me immediately who said, look, the activities, the marketing activities that we're moving forwards with, they're not as effective anymore. We're not seeing the same kind of leads being generated. We're not seeing that demand. We've got to try something new. And I'd kind of been experimenting with bringing social media into a sales environment. I've been experimenting that with my previous organization, and I decided this is something that I'm really going to look to drive forwards within Pitney Bowes. So, it really was a new approach. Okay, let's move away from the old methods, which was easier said than done. Let me throw some numbers at you, and these numbers are correct. I think these are May, June of this year. So, May, June, 15,276 employees worldwide for Pitney Bowes, of which 11,636, so roughly sort of 76% of them had a presence on LinkedIn. Combined, they reach 1.3 million unique connections. And if you take that just to one further level, that's roughly 176 first-degree connections per employee. And in May alone, they received near upon 35,000 profile views. And the reason why I put these numbers up is, and especially the 1.3 million, is I normally say to folks within Pitney Bowes, imagine there's an individual that you're targeting or a company that you are prospecting. There is a high probability that there's somebody already within Pitney Bowes that has a link or a connection through to either that organization or the individual. Surely, and I hate using the term, but surely that's going to beat cold calling. And on that subject, and some of you may have seen some of the numbers that I'm going to put up on screen here anyway, but 90% of decision makers now say that they never respond to a cold outreach. Now, I'm not in any way saying that the traditional methods of telemarketing or telesales, whatever you want to call it, or email marketing, I'm in no way saying that they're dead and buried. Far from that, they still do have a place, in today's digital landscape. What I'm purely saying here, though, is that social selling actually augments that whole process. I love this quote from Jeff Weiner, who is LinkedIn's CEO. Everyone needs to be on LinkedIn, from the customer service rep to the CEO. There are no limitations as to what a connected workforce can achieve, and nothing could be further from the truth. We have moved in recent years from an old model, an old sales model, one whereby we were conducting cold calling, we'd then qualify leads and then try and organise a follow-up to run some kind of a sales demo. We've moved to this new model now, one whereby we're utilising social networks more and more in order to educate and engage with individuals. There was a time whereby the salesperson, they held the keys to the kingdom. They had all the power. Okay, they had the product information, they had the use case scenarios, they had the analyst reports, they had product documentation, case studies, you name it. But all of that, or pretty much all of that information, is now readily available online. That power has now switched over to the buyer. And in fact, research has shown that 75% of buyers are now using social media to be more informed on vendors. They're 60 to 70% of the way through the buying process, and I think Alex Lowe touched on this earlier on. I think he quoted actually sort of 57%. But they're roughly about sort of 60 to 70% of the way through that buying process. And on average, there's 6.8 people involved in that average B2B buying decision. Let me give you a quick example. Nothing to do with Pitney Bowes. It's actually relating to my wife. Now, my wife loves spending money, okay? And about a year ago, she said to me, Paul, it's time I got a new car. And I'm thinking, oh God, how much is this going to cost me now? So my wife started to do her research. She identified 3 models by the 3 automotive manufacturers that you see on screen here. And she started doing her research, okay? She went online, she's doing the car configurators, she's reading AutoCar website, and all these blogs. She's doing all of her research. She's gathering all of this intelligence. But then what she did was she actually went onto Facebook and she turned to all of her connections on Facebook, all her friends and family members, and she asked, how many of you drive these particular makes and models of vehicle, and what do you think? And she got quite a bit of a response, actually. And it really kind of helped to, influence her decision. She then took it one step further, and she then went back to the same people to say, what dealership would you recommend that I go visit? Now, if I tell you where I live in North London, within, 20, 25 minutes drive time of my house, there are 3 Audi dealerships that we could visit. However, I think it was 2 or 3 individuals came back to her on Facebook to say, put in, sort of about an hour and 15 minutes of your time, drive to Cambridgeshire and go visit the Audi dealership there. You will not be disappointed. The service that you will receive, the experience that you will receive is second to none. So we took the advice, we jumped in the car. That weekend, we drove up to the Audi dealership, and 3 hours later, I was a lot lighter in my wallet. We signed on the dotted line and we ordered a vehicle. If I take it one step further, and this is no joke, I went back to the same dealership 4 weeks ago and I picked up my new Audi A1. So they've now got 2 deals from us, and that was all through the influence of my wife's Facebook network. Let me leave you with a couple more numbers before I sort of take you on this journey of the social selling program at Pitney Bowes. By 2020, millennials will form 50% of the global workforce. How many of you here have have kids, teenagers? Any of you have teenage kids? Okay, so I've got 3 daughters. One is 14, the eldest is 16. Okay, they've both got iPhones. Those iPhones are glued to their hands. Okay, and they do everything on these phones. Okay, my wife will phone my eldest to say, what time are you going to be home this evening? It'll go through to voicemail, but by way of a response, my wife will either receive a text message or a WhatsApp message. Okay, the only thing that my kids and the majority of teenagers don't do when it comes to a mobile phone is make a call. 2020, that's less than 3 years away, okay? These are the folks that have grown up with these mobile phones in their hands. They are, spending most of their waking hours on social networks. They have a complete new outlook on the way that they communicate and engage with individuals. So you've got to start changing your mindset now before it's too late. And I don't know if you can see some of these numbers here, but this is just a little bit of independent research which shows the new generations and the preferred channels in which they like to engage brands through. As you can see, the millennials, the Generation Y, those born between 91 and 99, internet, web chat, and social media. Those are the channels that they most prefer. Okay, so let me give you an insight on the social selling program at Pitney Bowes. It is predominantly built around LinkedIn. However, it does bring into the fold a lot of other social networks, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, even Instagram. The objective of the program is to show those folks that work in a sales or a business development capacity how they can leverage social media to be more effective in their day-to-day roles. I am not in any way setting out to try and turn these individuals into becoming LinkedIn gurus or social media experts. Far from that. This is purely an education here to show them the new way of working. Let me take you through the steps that I worked through in terms of rolling out this program. First and foremost, it was finding an executive sponsor internally within Pitney Bowes that was going to help back this program and drive it forward and get buy-in from various different business units. From there, it was identifying those individuals that we'd bring on board with this program initially, those that formed part of the initial pilot program, which, if memory serves me correct, I believe encompassed about seven or eight sales folks here in the UK. I then went ahead to align the program with other departments, other business units. Okay, so I'm working in a marketing capacity, but I'm working with sales guys. But I also need to bring in those folks that are looking after our CRM system. I need to bring in content marketing. I need to bring in product marketing. Okay, need to ensure that there's a steady flow of content that any of the individuals that are part of this program can begin to go ahead and utilize. So alignment with other departments is key. If you don't get that alignment, then it's going to fall flat on its face before you've taken any sort of further steps. Step number 4 was to work with the individuals that form part of this pilot program to build their professional brands. Okay, in other words, optimize their LinkedIn profiles, build out their LinkedIn profiles, position them as subject matter experts, position them, help to build their credibility and position them as trusted advisors. Okay, without that, no one's going to really take these individuals seriously. Step number 5 was we brought in 7 or 8 licenses copies of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is a premium license on LinkedIn. And those folks that formed part of this pilot program were trained up on how to actually go ahead and use that tool. Step number 6, like I say, was training. Training around Sales Navigator, training around best practices on LinkedIn and other other social networks. Step number 7 is all about reporting. So it's all very well, going ahead and rolling out a program of this kind, but what you've got to be able to do is to measure it and analyze it to see, is it working? Can you then justify your actual investment? And what can you now do in order to drive this program forwards and take it to a new level? And then finally, it's communication. Communication in terms of communicating not just with those program members, but with a wider audience internally as to, what is the program delivering? How is it generating opportunities? What's the stories behind some of the wins? Let me give you some quick ideas around some of the tactics that we've employed. First of all, and we still use this today, it's around events. Let's say you're going to an event, you can reach out to the event organizer. If that event's been run the previous year, normally that event organizer will be kind enough to provide you with a copy of the delegate list. The delegate list, normally it will just be made up of a job title and a company name. It's quite easy to go onto LinkedIn to identify who those individuals are, do a little bit of research on the individual, do a little bit of research on their organization, and then try and kickstart that process of engagement. Are they going to the same event this time around? If so, we'd love to meet up with you for a cup of coffee. I'd like to learn more about XYZ, whatever it may be. We've also used LinkedIn to help cleanse some of the data that we hold within our CRM system, which happens to be Salesforce.com. Okay, frequently we'll find individuals within Salesforce.com, pick up the phone, try and call them. We're told, sorry, that individual no longer works at the organization, or they're no longer in that particular role. If you go onto LinkedIn, you'll find out exactly where they are now and what they're doing. The easiest way for folks within Pitney Bowes to get involved in social selling is to follow the company page. And, obviously you're seeing this from a Pitney Bowes perspective, but this applies to, to all of you in your organizations, your companies, regardless of the size. But the easiest way to get involved is to start following the company page on LinkedIn. If you see any content that is applicable to your role or the industry that you might be selling into, like the post, but more importantly, share the post. Push it out, extend the reach, amplify the content. I did that, it's got to be about 3 years ago now. I posted one item of content, a colleague of mine saw it, shared it. 3 hours later, a customer of his reached out via phone. She picked up the phone, she called my colleague Alex. Alex, I've just seen a post that you shared on LinkedIn about a particular product that Pitney Bowes were driving forwards at that time. This lady here, Tonya, she had absolutely no idea that Pitney Bowes offered a solution of that kind. She invited Alex to come down and meet with her team. I think 3 or 4 weeks later, they were very, very interested to go ahead and bring in a tool of that kind to help with a particular project that they were working on. Cut a long story short, my colleague Alex closed a deal, I think it was about 3 months later, for $70,000. That was all triggered by him just sharing a post on LinkedIn. I've got a colleague of mine, Sam, he's based in Toronto, I think it is, or Vancouver, no, Toronto. Big multinational aerospace company, when made possible through LinkedIn, $940,000. Biggest win that we've ever had to date. Sam was trying to reach out to the chief information officer at this organization. He tried various different ways. He phoned, he emailed, he even went along to an event where this CIO was sitting on a panel Sam was going to try and meet him at the event, but failed in his attempt. Sam turned to LinkedIn, reached out directly to the CIO. 3 days later, the CIO came back to him. One of my personal favourites, combining traditional and digital marketing techniques. So colleagues of mine in Stockholm were running last year a breakfast seminar on the theme of customer centricity. They approached me. They wanted to target 50 senior marketing execs that worked within, I think it was telco, financial services, and insurance. We identified who those folks were on LinkedIn. We found out their location. We found out what office they were based at in and around the Stockholm area. We then purchased 50 copies of the book that you can see on screen here, which is a great book, I hasten to add. It's written by 2 Forrester research analysts, and it's all about customer experience, customer centricity. And what we did was we took copies of the book and we put them in the physical mail. We actually mailed a copy of the book to these 50 senior marketing execs, along with a handwritten invite to this breakfast seminar. I think we then left it 5 days, 6 days before we followed up through LinkedIn. Hey, did you get a copy of the book? Don't know if you've had a chance to read it or have a look through it. What do you think of it? By the way, if the subject matter is of interest to you, we're running a breakfast seminar on the very same topic. We'd love to have you come along. We got 8 meetings. 2 CMOs, as a result, actually came along to that breakfast seminar. Buying signals. You heard me say earlier on, Pitney Bowes, we're synonymous for franking machines. Alex Lowe said this earlier on. Go onto LinkedIn, put in a particular keyword in the search bar. Okay, you can have a look and see all the content, all the posts that have been posted recently that contain that keyword. These are buying signals. Okay, these are people that are, putting their hands up to say, I need a franking machine. I pick up on these, I kick them straight across to our inside sales organization, and they follow up on them. One of my personal favorites, very, very, very quickly, and apologies, I know that the screenshots are rather small. Number 1, a colleague of mine, Elizabeth, reaches out to me. She's interested in meeting with an organization called the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. She was going to Vegas the following week and wanted to meet with their senior marketing executive, some guy called Michael. That was all I had to go on. I've gone on to LinkedIn. I've identified Michael Goldsmith, who is their Vice President of International Marketing. Straight away, it's flagged to me that there's a colleague of mine that works within the software business at Pitney Bowes that's already connected to this guy, Michael Goldsmith. I go back to my colleague Elizabeth. I said to her, right, first and foremost, change your travel plans, okay? Because I'd gone through, looked at Michael's LinkedIn profile, seen that he'd also listed his Twitter handle on his LinkedIn profile, and when I've clicked through, he's posting photos of him and his family here in Europe. Okay, in fact, that's him and his son standing in front of the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. So I've gone back to Elizabeth. I've said, change your travel plans, because if you're going to Vegas next week, there's a high probability that he's not going to be there. He's here, possibly still on his European holiday. I said, secondly, what we're going to do is we're going to reach out to the mutual connection within Pitney Bowes. We're going to get him to go ahead and provide an introduction, which is exactly what he did. Elizabeth got a call set up with this guy, Michael Goldsmith. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks later. Cut a long story short, after a face-to-face meeting, Michael Goldsmith then said that he would introduce Elizabeth to a number of his peers at some of the big Las Vegas casino chains, one being an organization called Station Casinos, and 6 months later, Elizabeth closed a deal with Station Casinos for $120,000. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that it was LinkedIn, that is purely responsible for this, but this is just kind of highlighting the importance of your network. And let me just substantiate this. These are the numbers that we have generated from social selling since the program's inception back in 2012, 2013. I've done $4.5 million. In fact, that number actually went up yesterday. It's like $4.6 million. Okay, it's been phenomenally successful at Pitney Bowes. I've still got folks at Pitney Bowes, though, that, they don't want to have anything to do with this. Fine. You don't want to have anything to do with it. I've got numerous individuals, though, that do want to come on board with this program. Let me quickly summarize. What is social selling all about? Number one, it's developing a reputation. So in other words, it's building your profile on LinkedIn. It's building your brand presence. Secondly, it's building your network, so going out there and connecting with individuals, with colleagues, with partners, with customers. Thirdly, gathering intelligence. There's an absolute wealth of information, not just on LinkedIn, but all these social networks. There's an absolute wealth of information on individuals and companies, and it's just waiting for you to reach out, grab that information, and to use it to your advantage. And finally, I've turned it offering insights. I guess you really should class it as being engagement, okay, which is a big, big part of social selling. You don't just want to be pushing content out there, okay? Start engaging, start commenting on some of the posts that you see customers and partners, that they're putting out there. Very, very quickly, I've also kind of tied this program with our employee advocacy program. So everybody that is part of the social selling program at Pitney Bowes becomes part of our employee advocacy program. They receive the training, they get access to the platform, they connect their handles, they browse the content, and they start sharing content out there. It's all helping to build their credibility. So let me just close. Well, you don't close a sale, but you open a relationship. Thank you very much.